Hi everybody and welcome to On the Spectrum. My name is Gracie Lyman and I'll be your host this evening. We want to welcome you if you haven't been with us before. We have a program that's completely unique and it's put on by the ASRC. And it's also completely crewed by those on the autism spectrum. We have a very special show for you tonight. We're here with Kerry Tedford-Coles from Plan of Connecticut, and we're down at the Cox Communications Studio in Cheshire, Connecticut to bring you this show. So without further ado, I'd just like to introduce Kerry Tedford-Coles. So
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. So Kerry is part of, as I mentioned before, Plan of Connecticut. So tonight's show, we're going to talk about what exactly Plan is and how it can help families who have those family member on the spectrum. So I'll just dive into the first question here. What exactly does Plan do?
Plan of Connecticut is a nonprofit organization that acts as trustee for special needs trusts.
Okay. So does Plan stand for anything?
It does. It stands for Planned Lifetime Assistance Network, with the idea that we are going to take care of people's children for their lifetime.
Okay, cool. So children and, as you mentioned, so what population would that be? What population does Plan serve?
We serve people of all disabilities and of all ages. Typically, you'll see families set up a trust when their child is younger, and then the trust doesn't get funded until the parents are ready to. So a trust can be established and be with us for 40, 50 years before it gets funded.
Okay, cool. And so how exactly did Plan begin?
It started with families who had children with mental illness, and they formed a group out of NAMI and talked with one another about their concerns about what was going to happen with their kids when they were no longer around. And so they decided that they would take it upon themselves, and they went to the Connecticut legislation and asked if they could serve as trustee.
Oh, cool. When was that?
In 1988 is around when the parents first started getting together. So we just celebrated last year our 25th anniversary.
Wow, congratulations.
And then in 1990 is when the Connecticut General Assembly gave us the power to essentially act as trustee. And then we funded a first trust in 1993.
Cool. Sounds awesome. All right, so how exactly does Plan work?
We work in a couple of different ways. Really, you see that our mission, more than anything, is to get people to understand the importance of having a special needs trust and how it can help a family in the long run who have a child with a disability. And I'm going to use the word child sort of to run the whole gamut.
Okay.
So it's not just children under the age of 18. It's once you're a parent, you'll figure this out eventually someday. You're always a parent. It doesn't matter how old your kids get.
Yeah.
So we work with families, and typically it's to start with setting up a personal care plan. Sometimes you'll hear lawyers call it a letter of intent.
Okay.
And that basically just is a diagram of what your child likes, doesn't like, how you see the money being used in the trust, and it's really a map for us as to how to help that child. And I tell parents all the time that even if they're not ready to set up the trust yet, because it's a big endeavor, you're thinking about the terrible thing of when you're gone and you're not going to be there to take care of your kid anymore, to go ahead and write all those important things down.
Okay.
What does my kid not like? What's going to have them have a meltdown? I always used the example that even though my parents I have a kid on the spectrum, he's 13. Even though my parents were with him all the time, I remember when he was young that he had to have a separate utensil for every different food on his plate.
Oh, wow.
He didn't want to cross-contaminate. So I had this anxiety that, well, what if my husband and I died and my parents would be the guardians of my son, and they gave him a hard time and embarrassed him about, well, you don't need 3 forks. What do you need 3 forks for? So that sort of thing is actually written in my personal care plan to remind people that there are things that are real clear for him that might not be clear for everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. I also have a brother who's on the spectrum, and I find that, sometimes like what's so mundane to me and what I know about him so well, and it's second nature, even like family members, like cousins, they don't understand it. And I'm like, oh, that's right. Like you don't live it every day, so you don't exactly know. But like, there's some things that are just, you have to just do it.
Right. It's like a language only your family speaks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the second piece after the personal care plan is setting up that special needs trust. Plan has all of its documents pre-drafted, so hopefully that will help cut the cost down for families. So you're not going into a law office for them to draft the trust, but you're going into the law office and working with a lawyer to go ahead and fill in that document with you and update your will.
Okay.
So it's really two pieces.
Cool. Why is it important to establish a special needs trust?
There's lots of reasons. Really, like I talked before, is that you have a concern that when you're gone as a parent, that nobody is going to be able to step in and provide. And you want to be careful, and as a sister, you can probably appreciate this, is that you might not want to cross the line of being sister, but also being the one who doles out the money.
Yeah.
So you want that to be separate. So to have a trustee of a special needs trust, you don't have to worry about that. It allows protection from creditors. I mean, that's a big piece. We have lots of people who have disabilities who might have made some bad purchases on a credit card, and it won't be able to access, those creditors won't be able to access the funds.
Yeah.
But I think really the biggest piece is that peace of mind you get, knowing that the money is safe, somebody's going to help, somebody who understands, especially a plan, who understands people with disabilities, that they can know that it's there and that their child is going to be taken care of when they're not there to do it anymore.
Yeah. Very, very poignant. Okay, so what types of trusts does Plan offer for families to establish to help their child?
Plan has a couple of different kinds of trust. It can be complicated, but I'll just try to break it down in that we have what we've been mostly talking about here is the third-party trust, and that's when anybody essentially can set up a trust and put their own funds in. So as a parent, I'm going to put my funds in this trust. It's always considered my money, so it's never considered the person with the disability's money, so they still qualify for Social Security disability, they still qualify for Medicaid. It's typically not funded until the parents are deceased. And then we also have self-settled trusts, which in the event that somebody never sets up a third-party trust and the person inherits it with the disability, they have money. We actually had a Powerball winner as one of our clients. She won Powerball. So she didn't win the big prize, but it was still it was still a significant amount. So again, to be able to still qualify, mostly for Medicaid, mostly for health insurance, you have to have it in a special needs trust. So those are called self-settled. That's when it's your own money. I'm the person with the disability, I have my own money. And then we have a pooled trust, which is also another self-settled trust.
Okay, and so you kind of just touched on this briefly, but when should the trust be funded?
The trust can be funded whenever the family is ready. So with a third-party trust, it can be, like I said, it's typically upon the death. Most of the families we serve are very middle class. Most of their assets are in their house. They don't have millions of dollars that they plan on funding this trust with. I think people, there's a stigma with the word trust that you think Paris Hilton and the Hilton family and the trust fund baby. And but really, Plan makes a great effort to allow it to be accessible to everyone. So it can be upon the death. It can be, we have some families in which, especially the parents, want to disconnect money from their relationship with their child, so they might fund it during their lifetime to, again, bring that familial relationship back and not have it be a power struggle about money. But with those self-settled trusts, if a person ever has money, and you see a lot of people on the spectrum who their parents might have put money into a college savings, or grandparents had given lots of savings bonds growing up, and that when they are starting to qualify for benefits, they'll need to take that money and put it in a special needs trust to be able to qualify for SSI or the Title 19 Medicaid.
Okay, so are trust funds invested?
They are invested. Dominantly with Plan of Connecticut, we invest, if it's $60,000 or more, it goes into a very minimal risk, but monitored very closely. Again, we want these to last the person's lifetime, so we're looking for long-term gains. that has a fee associated with it when it's under $60,000, and we do accept trusts of any size. When it's under $60,000, it's in your basic sort of money market account, so there's no investment fees associated with it.
Yeah. Okay. So, does anyone monitor a plan?
Yes. With the Connecticut General Assembly empowering us to act as trustee, we report to the Secretary of State and to the General Assembly around this time every year. So they're monitoring how much money we're managing, and they also are looking at any trusts where families have left some of the funds to Plan of Connecticut upon the beneficiary's death, upon their child's death, so we can show that we're not sort of holding back all the funds for us eventually.
Yeah.
And then the biggest oversight is really through the Connecticut Banking Department. So we're monitored just like a bank is. They come in, they audit us, they look at our records, they look at the trust, they look at how we're distributing money from the trust, so it's very closely monitored.
Okay, awesome. And so what happens to the funds in the trust when the beneficiary passes away?
The grantor or the family, whomever has set up that trust, gets to name who they wish to be the remainder beneficiary. There's for plan, there's no stipulation that you have to leave any funds to the organization.
Yeah.
So you can leave it to charity, you can leave it to other siblings. If it's one of those self-settled trusts that we talked about where it's the person with the disability's own funds to begin with, Medicaid always gets paid back first with those. So we would pay the state back first for any services they provided, and then after that it gets to go to whom they've named.
Yeah, does it ever happen to like charities and things like that? Have you seen that before?
Yes, there were significant funds dispersed last year actually to some local charities that the parents felt that that particular organization had served their child so well growing up. We have a couple of parents that have named school districts that they felt that the school district had been really great to their kids, so we certainly it's certainly to children. Sometimes when people have two kids with disabilities, then they name the opposite trust. So it will go into the opposite trust when that person dies.
Yeah. Wow, okay. Does Plan have any services to help families who do not yet have a trust?
We do have a charitable trust at Plan, and we just have a pretty simple application process. If somebody is in need, they don't have a trust in place, they can apply to us for grant funds. We have provided, actually, ASRC, we helped a couple of families attend the autism conference recently.
Oh, cool.
We have, I'm trying to think of some of the other autism-focused distributions. A companion dog, we helped with a companion dog too. And actually, I saw the mom recently, and she was saying how both her son and the dog have gotten really fat since they've met each other, because the dog would lower himself in front of the kitchen table, and the child would stand on its back, and the dog would stand up with the kid on his back so he can reach all the food, all the cookies and stuff on the counter, and the dog knew that he was getting it. So, so that we've medical equipment, anything that Title 19 might not provide. We've put ramps on houses, things like that. So it's certainly something that people could call and ask for an application, and it goes through a committee, and it usually takes, it can take a little over a month to find out if the grant is going to be dispersed or not.
Cool. Do you have any trusts that help any individuals over the age of 65?
Like I said, quickly, we have a pooled trust. That's the only special needs trust available federally that can be used by people with disabilities over 65. It can also be used by people under 65. It's really our fastest growing trust in that it helps people over 65 stay home rather than go into a nursing home. So it provides extra care in the house. It's kind of a strange process, but it works really well. And we probably have about 200 people right now that have either come home out of the nursing homes or have been able to just stay home with care coming in. So
that's awesome.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and 200, that's a huge number. So how many do you guys serve?
Right now we have, for funded trusts, we have about 365.
Wow.
And for unfunded trusts, there's probably another 450. Like I said, those trusts can sit there unfunded for 50 years even. So we're constantly growing, constantly looking for new families, and again, trying to educate people on the importance of of making sure you have something in place. It might not be Plan of Connecticut, but as long as you have that special needs trust. People used to say, if you have a kid with a disability, just write them out of your will. And this really allows a family to make sure that their kids are all equally cared for when they're
absolutely.
gone.
It's a beautiful organization, and I don't think it's something that a lot of people think about necessarily. And I mean, unless this is something that impacts your family, it's sort of like this is a very cool thing that you guys have established, and other trusts as well. So I guess that's it. I think we covered it all, but thanks again for joining us.
Again, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And so thank you to our viewers. And if you're looking in for more information and would like to contact Kerry, her information is located at the bottom of the screen. So thank you and have a good night.
This morning on an early grave, I'm ready to say goodbye. Nothing left to say. Time to try not to spend all I wanted. I made all of this.